dumel na protégenie 12fs. You're dragging our name through the mud, Mason. That's how my father says anything important. Flat, public, meant to sting. I was still in my coveralls, a ribbon of grease across my knuckles from the transmission I'd rebuilt that afternoon, when he said it loud enough for the room to pause its laughter. I was 29, standing in the foyer of the house I grew up in. My older brother, Blake, tightened the immaculate knot of his Stanford tie and soaked in a roomful of approval like it was oxygen. The Whitaker Motor Group had just turned 60, 11 rooftops across Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. A regional altar to chrome, noise, and the way my father believes the world should sound. Blake speaks the language Dad trusts: synergy, margins, expansion, everything with a decimal point. I speak torque, amperage, airflow. At family dinners, they let him finish sentences. With me, they waited for the punchline. The party was for Blake's MBA and for Dad's formal handoff, the crown moving from one head to another. Investors, bankers, sales managers, anyone who directs where money points filled the living room. I parked myself by the kitchen doorway with a beer and the good sense to be quiet. Dad lifted a glass. Blake sees the future. Mason's always preferred his hands to his head. Laughter that wasn't quite laughter fluttered across the room. Blake wore the smile he's been polishing since junior prom. People clapped because people clap when power tells them to. I took another sip and stared at the hardwood. Pride is loud when it wants to congratulate itself. Shame hums like a refrigerator in the next room. Constant, a little colder than you expect. There was a stranger in the crowd, tall, tailored, a face that looked like it had never once worried about rent. He shook Blake's hand by the fireplace, murmured something, and then, very deliberately, glanced over at me. It wasn't a stray look. It was target acquisition. He and my brother angled their shoulders toward a corner where the noise thinned. He said something that made Blake's eyebrows jump. When the stranger stepped away, he didn't drift toward the bar or the front door. He walked straight toward me, cutting through the crush of family friends, like a man who expected people to part for him. "I'm guessing you're Mason Whitaker," he said, extending a hand that felt confident without being cruel. "Avery Cole." "I don't think we've met," I said, shaking it. "We haven't," he said, "but I know your work." He slipped a sealed envelope from his jacket and put it in my palm the way a magician produces a coin. "This is for you." "What is it?" "Your future," he said, "if you want it." The paper had that expensive tooth you can feel through your fingerprints. Inside, when I later opened it, was letterhead from Meridian Mobility, an offer sheet I had no business holding, and 2 pages of language that made the room tilt. Chief Technology Officer, Development Budget, Equity, Birmingham Manufacturing Footprint. At the bottom, a handwritten line. "We've read your patents." The charging topology alone could change the southern market. For 3 years, I'd been staying late in my own garage, chasing a sound you don't hear so much as feel silence revealing what's working. Not conversion kits slapped onto gas cars, a ground-up rethink, batteries arranged to cool themselves without heavy plumbing, a compact motor plan that shaved weight and cost, a charging system that could turn an ordinary gas station into an EV pit stop without tearing the whole lot down 30 minutes to 80% and back on the road. I paid for patent filings with overtime checks and the old F-150 I sold, even though my hands remembered exactly how its steering wheel was supposed to feel. 6 months ago, I brought Dad 2 prototypes and a PowerPoint I'd made in the free version of software that stamped every slide with a logo, saying I couldn't afford the real thing. He skimmed the first page, patted my shoulder, and said electric was a coastal hobby for kids. Blake was kinder, which somehow hurt worse. The infrastructure isn't there, he said, as if those words were a door he could close on my face. I kept building anyway. If I couldn't sell my father, maybe I could sell the future. It turns out the future had been watching me from the patent office. Avery and I met for lunch the next day at a place where the waiters wear white shirts that make you check your own elbows. He unfolded a binder across the table. Financial modeling, a rollout roadmap, a list of names he could say without bragging because the names did it for him. Venture firms that specialize in disrupting legacy empires. Manufacturing leads from Dearborn and Arlington who wanted to come home south. He tapped my patent drawings with a pen. This solves the chicken and egg problem, he said. If you can charge where people already stop, grocery lots, fuel stations, ballparks, range anxiety turns into an errand, not a day. We'll hire the welders and machinists who already know how to read metal with their hands. We build here, sell here, and tell a story that belongs here. I owe my father a conversation, I said, staring at numbers that would make my landlord cry. You owe yourself one, Avery said. Your father already priced you. He wasn't wrong, but I still tried. That evening I found Dad in his study, a fortress of black walnut and framed photographs of him shaking hands with governors and quarterbacks. If we seated fast chargers along I-20 and I-65, I started, we could... He didn't look up. Mason, our people buy engines they can feel. Let your brother handle the future. I'm trying to give it to you. You're trying to drag me into a California hobby. What if somebody does it without us? He set down his pen and finally met my eyes. Then, we'll out-advertise them. That was the sentence that broke something I had been bending for years. You can't out-advertise physics. You can't tell a customer the car they want costs more to run and needs more maintenance because it sounds right. I left the study with a yes already forming in my throat. In the garage behind my apartment, I sat on the cold step by the door and let the quiet hum through. Avery's offer wasn't just money. It was air. I called him before the hour was out. I signed 2 days later under a banker's lamp in an office that smelled like new carpet and paper dust. For the first time since Grandpa died, I felt like I was standing in the right place in my own life. Meridian moves like a startup with a stopwatch. They leased a warehouse 15 minutes from Whitaker headquarters and made it breathe epoxy floors, bright bays, a test line with a makeshift wind tunnel that rattled the windows when we ran the fans hard. Sarah Chen, our COO, shook my hand and said, "Your Charger is the show. The car is the reason people come to the show." We hired carefully. I pulled in 3 of the best welders from the Talladega store by offering health benefits their kids could feel. 2 machinists from a competitor who'd been waiting 10 years for someone to ask them how they'd do it. And an electrician, Miss Alma, who can look at a schematic and tell you where the heat will hide. We sat on milk crates the first night and sketched production around coffee cups. 18 months was the cautious timeline. I said we could roll a drivable mule in 9 and ship a production run in 15 if they let me choose where to spend and where to scrounge. Avery said, "Go." 10 months in, the M1 Meridian's first sedan eased off the line and onto our chalked-up test track, like a secret finally telling itself. 300 miles real range, not brochure math. Sub-30-minute charges on the stations we were quietly installing at grocery lots, and fuel stops from Tuscaloosa to Tupelo. We filmed the first public charge in a Publix parking lot. A church van idled 2 spaces down. Kids pressed to the windows. You can hear their clapping on the video. It's the sound I replay when sleep won't come. We launched with 5 independent dealers willing to bet on a local name and 20 charging sites across 3 states. The campaign was simple and stubborn. Southern Built Electric. No lecture, no coastal sneer. Just a promise your wallet and your weekend would recognize. Pre-orders buried our projections. The Birmingham News ran us on A1 as a homegrown moonshot. Business journals wrote that we'd solved the infrastructure choke point everyone pretended would fix itself. I waited for my phone to ring. It didn't. My cousin Lila called instead. "Blake's asking around," she said. "He thinks you're consulting for the enemy." "I'm not consulting," I said. "I'm working." The call from Dad's office came in July. "Mr. Whitaker would like you here tomorrow at 9, his assistant said. "Bring whatever you need to explain yourself." I didn't bring my patents. Those already lived in places no one at Whitaker could reach. I brought numbers and pictures, and 1 sentence I had practiced on the drive over, so it would come out even. They were waiting in the conference room. Dad, Blake, 3 board members whose suits always looked bored. Blake opened like a prosecutor. "We know you're Meridian's CTO. I am. You've been competing against your own family," Dad said, voice low. "Using knowledge you gained working here. I've been using technology I developed on my own time, with my own money, after you told me not to. And I warned you someone was coming." I laid the first month's sales graph on the table. Meridian captured 12% of new car sales in Jefferson County last month. We're projecting 25 by December. That's not a fad. That's a forecast. "Impossible," one board member said without looking up, as if the numbers were rude. 67 Chargers live, I said, sliding the map. 85 by Labor Day. Average dwell 28 minutes to 80%. We've signed conversion partners across the corridor. We built what you refused to. Blake's fingers tightened on the page. Dad's eyes were a hard blue I used to think meant safety. "You betrayed your family," he said. "You betrayed the business when you decided advertising could beat physics." I placed a single printout in the middle. Patent certificates, charging topology, battery architecture, motor assembly, each stamped with the government's favorite word, granted. If you pivot now, you'll be chasing inferior technology for years. I tried to make this a Whitaker story. You chose not to listen. No one moved. Behind them, the showroom glittered. Neon, chrome, a museum to a kind of past that doesn't ask permission to keep being the present. I gathered my papers and told them the line I had brought to say, "The future isn't waiting for you to approve it." I walked out past the framed photo of Dad shaking hands with the governor at the ribbon cutting for store number 10, and felt, for once, taller than the picture. 6 months will tell the truth no press release can bury. Meridian clawed 29% of the region by year's end. Whitaker's market share slid by 1/3. Our second model, a compact, stacked pre-orders faster than we could weld the subframes. Fleet contracts snapped up our charging conversions because 30 minutes beats 8 hours, and budgets don't care about nostalgia. Investors rewarded speed and punished denial. Whitaker's stock slumped 40%. The board asked Dad to retire with gratitude. They brought in an outsider with EV scars and a mandate to modernize. Blake kept a title, but lost the levers. He requested a licensing meeting. I sent our general counsel to say what I couldn't say kindly. Exclusive means exclusive. Meridian went public 18 months after our first sale. The valuation made me wealthier than the empire Dad built. But that wasn't the part that mattered in the marrow. The part that mattered was driving past our plant on a humid Tuesday at 10 p.m., seeing the windows lit and the smoke plumes from the reflow line, knowing men and women I grew up with were inside building something we were once told wouldn't work here. Miss Alma keeps a running tally on a whiteboard by the cafeteria. Chargers live, cars shipped, paychecks sent on time. The last number is her favorite. Mine too. Mom calls sometimes. We talk about tomatoes and the dog sleeping on the ottoman he's not supposed to, and the way the house echoes more than it used to. Once she said Dad was proud in his way. I told her I was too in mine. Pride is a complicated currency. Lila invites me to birthdays. I bring gifts that require batteries just to be contrary. I bought a quiet house in Mountain Brook and a used fishing boat with a motor that coughs exactly twice before remembering how to be an engine. Some nights I drive past the old headquarters. They've put a neat row of chargers out front. The signs say, Whittaker Electric. We're ready. I hope they are. Competition made me. It might save them. The trades turned our arc into a case study. The mechanic who built the future. His family refused. Reporters love the shape grease-stained hands to ringing the opening bell. That's fine. But the moment I replay isn't the bell. It's a night in a crowded living room when a father called his son an embarrassment because the son didn't look like the next CEO. I used to taste that sentence like rust. Now it tastes like permission. Avery says the next plant goes further south, and the truck program moves up a quarter because farmers keep cornering our sales reps to ask when they can tow without burning a hole in their fuel budget. Sarah wants a van because fleets are where the margins hide. I want a small hatch for kids in their first apartment, something that makes a rite of passage less expensive. We argue like people who respect each other's eyes. I sleep some nights. On the others, I stand at the plant's mezzanine and watch the line carry a chassis from stage to stage, like hands passing a gift. You can tell a lot about a company by the sound of its bolts being torqued. Ours sounds like confidence. Blake and I crossed paths once at a charity gala. He was thinner than I remembered, the suit hanging a little loose, the way success sometimes leaves quickly and takes a little muscle with it. He said hello without using my name. I asked how Mom was doing. He said fine. Small talk with scaffolding. Before we turned away, he said softly, "You could have told me." I wanted to say, I did. And I wanted to say, you wouldn't have heard me anyway. And I wanted to say nothing at all. I said, I hope you're well, and meant it. What I've learned is this. Gatekeepers are loud, but doors aren't always attached to the gates they guard. You can spend your life asking permission from people who can't imagine a world that doesn't need their permission. Or you can build a door and hold it open for the ones who recognize the sound a real engine makes, even when the engine doesn't make any noise at all. Every once in a while, I drive the long way home, past a grocery lot where 3 Meridian chargers glow under the sodium lamps. A grandmother in church clothes leans against her sedan, scrolling on her phone while the battery drinks. A kid in a ball cap asks his dad how something that quiet can go that fast. The dad shrugs and says, "New kind of motor." The kid nods like that's the most natural thing in the world. It is. That's the future we told ourselves we weren't ready for. Turns out it didn't need us to be ready. It just needed us to stop talking long enough to hear it arriving.